Hello, everyone, and welcome to Calgary's first webinar of 2022. I'm Chancellor Deborah Yedlin, and I'll be your host for this afternoon's discussion. If you've participated in one of our previous webinars, welcome back. And to all our new viewers, thanks for joining us. Today, we're talking with Her Worship, Jody Gondek, Mayor of Calgary. But before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we're hosting this webinar on the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is also, home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. It's been 22 months since we started holding these webinars. We've gone from concentrating on COVID and its impact to addressing a wider array of issues that are of interest to our community. From energy and the environment to economics, sport and mental health, equity, diversity, and inclusion, we have invited experts from Calgary and the broader community to share their thoughts on these and many other issues. And today, I'm joined by Calgary's Mayor, Mayor Jyoti Gondek, and we will discuss her vision for Calgary. Last October, Calgarians chose Mayor Gondek as the city's 37th mayor. Not only is she the first woman to be elected mayor of Calgary, she's also a Calgary alumna and past faculty member in the Haskayne School of Business. She's coming into this new role, leading and governing 1.3 million people during a time of an urgency for public health and economic growth and diversification. Calgary recognizes that for cities to thrive, we need to equip our students with the right tools and leadership skills. And today I'd also like to talk a little bit about partnerships. Partnerships between great research universities like the University of Calgary and the communities they call home. Because great research universities don't just help mind transform, they help great cities transform through new ideas, the development of new technologies, and new industries. The fact Calgary has been ranked first in the country ahead of Toronto and Waterloo as the top U15 university in generating startups is testament to the role it has played and will continue to play in Calgary's economic future. And together with Mayor Gondek, we can take on the challenges that face us and shape a bright future for Calgary. And with that, I'd like to introduce our distinguished guest. Jody Gondek was sworn in as Calgary's 37th mayor on October 25th, 2021. And prior to being elected mayor, she served as city councillor for Ward 3 from 2017 to 2021. She holds a Ph.D. in urban sociology and an MA in organizational sociology. Throughout her career, Mayor Gondek has taken a big picture approach to pressing challenges. Often, she has found processes and policies exist simply because they've never been questioned. And she has come to understand that by probing and chipping away at issues, we can move forward with improvements that have meaning in our everyday lives. Since the oil price crash in 2014, Calgarians have faced many challenges, and COVID made things worse. From the importance of an economic recovery, which will decrease unemployment and revitalize the city, to the lack of affordable housing, the ongoing importance of truth and reconciliation, increasing the labor force participation rate of women, or understanding how Calgary can make a difference in addressing climate change, Mayor Gondek believes solutions to these issues must be bold and rooted in economic, social, and environmental resilience. Mayor Gondek's professional background includes a position as an adjunct professor in the Haskayne School of Business, leading the Westman Center for Real Estate Studies at Haskayne. While at the Westman Center, Gondek examined the challenges facing Calgary's commercial real estate sector as property values in the core plummeted. She knew that this issue would be a big one for Calgary, and statistics released last week show that the downtown offices are 1/3 empty. She also ran a successful consulting practice for 12 years, helping clients in the energy and city building sectors evolve their business models to fit a changing regulatory and economic environment. Throughout her career, Mayor Gondek has been known as a community builder and diversity champion who understands the power of cross-sector partnerships where business, social organizations, and educational institutions are connected to local governments to better serve the people and the communities they're situated in. She's honored to serve as Calgary's mayor. Welcome, Mayor Gondek, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Chancellor.
So I'm going to start with an easy question. We're coming up around the 85th day of your time in office. What do you feel are your greatest accomplishments? And are you looking at some of the things and saying, oh dear, maybe I should have done something differently? And are you disappointed in anything that's happened in the last little while?
Great set of questions. And I'll tell you, there's not a day where I don't wake up excited to be doing this work. Public service is something that I'm absolutely committed to, and I could not be more honored to be serving this great city and its citizens. So I'm still happy to be doing this. There's been a couple of rocky days, but you know what? You just get up and keep going. And I have to tell you, the greatest part of this work is the council that I get to work with. They are an amazing group of people. They're very diverse in their thinking, but they are all incredibly committed to the communities that they serve. And I would say the greatest victory has been coming together as a team and really understanding how to work with each other. We've had a few unanimous decisions on some pretty important projects, and I think it shows how well we collaborate together.
And when you look at the last while, what have you what has surprised you the most?
I would say the thing that surprised me the most is just this continued persistence to not believe that vaccinations are important during this pandemic. I'm surprised that people are not seeing that they need to get vaccinated so that we can get into recovery mode. I would say that's the thing that surprised me the most. In an unhelpful way, I would say the thing that surprised me in a really good way is how quickly my colleagues on council have picked up their position and learned what their role as a governor is and how well they are performing.
It's not an easy feat given so many new council members.
Yeah, and you know what? There was a lot of people that said with such a new council, it's going to be a tough start. It's been a great start. They are really good people.
So within 11 days of being sworn in, you declared a climate emergency. Can you tell us what your motivation was for making that declaration for Calgary, and give us some more insight into your thinking?
Absolutely. When I saw what was happening globally with capital starting to flow to organizations and cities that were making a commitment to climate action, I realized that Calgary needed to be in the same position as those other jurisdictions. So, in conversation with a lot of Calgarians, as well as looking at the leadership demonstrated within our energy sector, I proposed to my fellow councillors the idea of an emergency declaration so that we would be taken seriously as a city. And what's happened as a result is people around the world have noticed who we are. They are interested in working with companies in our city that are leading the way towards more sustainable energy production systems. I can tell you when I went down to Houston for the World Petroleum Congress, everyone was very pleased to see that our city was taking sustainability and energy transformation seriously. So we've put ourselves in a good place, and we have now finally kept pace with the energy sector that has long ago made commitments to net zero.
And so, when you talk about, is this? Do you see this? There's a billion people have are in jurisdictions that have declared a climate emergency. Do you see this as table stakes for Calgary? So this is our ticket to entry. What do we have to do now to follow it up and show that we're continuing along the path, that it's a declaration and there's something to back it up? What do we have to do?
You know what? Great question. You're right. It was absolutely table stakes. It was our entry. And I'm very impressed with members of council who banded together to create the notice of motion that lays out the measures that we wish to see from our administration. So we are being accountable, and we are saying that we have to take action and actually demonstrate that we are achieving results. There's things like the Clean Energy Improvement Program that is accessible to Calgarians who wish to do their own part in terms of climate action and energy efficiency. And I think it's going to be important for our city to make sure we're taking advantage of federal funds for electrification of our fleet vehicles, that we are taking advantage of provincial opportunities to do energy audits of our buildings. There's a lot of great work that we can do here locally. And I think the other important thing to do is to make sure we are announcing to the world the number of great companies we have in the energy and tech sector that are leading the way in solutions that will end up with cleaner and more sustainable production methods.
What kind of conversations have you had with energy sector leaders since your declaration?
We had an energy leaders breakfast where we brought everybody together, and that's where members of council made our commitment and said, you know, you have created your own plans, you have your strategic vision. Pathways to net zero is something that the oil sands companies came up with, and we are happy now to be in step with you and keeping pace with the commitments that you have made. We shall do the same. They were very happy to see the municipal government taking such action. They've been sort of on their own in terms of sending that signal that they do care about the environment and they are taking action. And now they have an advocate who is speaking on their behalf as well. So it's been a lot of great conversations, and I continue to see great work out of those organizations.
So you talk about, you know, the creation of companies, the new technologies, et cetera, and immediately a lot of people start thinking about, well, what does that mean for the downtown core? How does this fit into the downtown revitalization? And perhaps you can share your vision for what that looks like as we continue to deal with this issue, as the CBRE vacancy numbers showed us just last week.
Yeah, you know, back in 2014, when I was with the Haskayne School of Business and well into 2015, I was working with Calgary Economic Development on their real estate advisory committee. And there were people that are experts in commercial real estate that were saying at that time, the city needs to understand the implication of the crash of oil and gas. And it will be that property values will decrease and that will impact city budgets. And I don't know that city council acted quickly enough back in the day. And I think it's because everyone believed we would go into some sort of recovery mode fairly quickly. And as a result, we find ourselves in a situation where we have a lot of vacancy, valuation of properties has dropped. So what do we do to bring things back on track and move towards some sort of a new normal that is prosperous for us? And I think we can understand how meaningful change within a building can really attract meaningful work. And I say this using the example of the Ampersand building. So that building underwent a renovation. It's an Aspen property, and they did a great job of making it a space and a place that people actually want to be. When you talk to some of the folks who work there, with Avatar Innovations as an example, those young professionals have said, not only is the work I do meaningful and I feel like I'm actually doing good in the world, but I'm situated in a beautiful space that makes me happy to be working, and I'm close by to things like Chinatown and access to other amenities. So the spaces and places that we create for people in our city are important and significant in terms of bringing about that change of what type of businesses want to locate in our vacant spaces.
And there's a chicken and an egg conversation that happens, because on the one hand, you want people to come downtown and live. We talk about the conversion of some of the downtown office towers into living spaces, but we need to counterbalance that with the services. And so how do you sort of square that circle, so to speak? Because you need that commitment to the services to be located downtown, and yet they won't necessarily come downtown until they know people are there, either working and, more importantly, living. Where does that sort of, how do you see that that dynamic playing out? Do you have any thoughts on how you might be able to encourage both to happen?
Well, that chicken and egg dilemma is a very real one. And the downtown revitalization plan that we approved as a previous council in spring of last year does address some of those things. We made some commitments to invest financial resources into the public realm. We have done things like investing in Arts Commons so that we can finally get the scaffolding off that building and get moving with that project. And there is attention to activating spaces downtown as well to make sure that it's a place that people wish to come to and engage in. And I think one of the successes we've had from an administrative perspective, and if we call it cutting the red tape, for lack of a better term, we have learned how to change land uses downtown in a quicker manner so that different types of businesses can locate in the buildings that were previously only for office space. We have a quicker process by which a dentist's office or a lab or a pet grooming facility can now be located in a downtown space. So we are learning how to be more nimble and responsive to the market.
So when you travel around the world, you often go to major cities and you see that there are post-secondary institutions are situated downtown and they're visible. So this is a University of Calgary webinar. You're a Calgary alum and former Haskayne adjunct professor. Where do you see the University's Calgary positioning itself, and how does the university fit into the downtown revitalization plan? as you move forward?
Well, I had the great pleasure of working at the downtown campus of U of C when I was with the Westman Center for Real Estate Studies. And I would say my biggest takeaway was ensuring that students that would be engaging in downtown had an opportunity to learn there and build some of the relationships that they would need to have to be successful in their future careers. So, from a real estate school perspective, I can tell you that a lot of the sessional instructors who came into our classroom were very happy to see students downtown. It was easier for them to engage with them. It was easier for them to go on walking tours. I would say a big highlight in the course that I taught was focused on revitalizing urban areas. And it was a project called Urban Plan. And it imagines this city where they have this redevelopment opportunity, but there's a homeless shelter there. There is a church there. There are certain pieces of property where you can't change land uses, and the students have to imagine how they would do this if they were a land developer. So we did that project in the classroom, and after that was over, I had the pleasure of taking the students on the C train down to East Village, where the light bulb went off and they said, oh my goodness, this is exactly like the project we just did in the classroom. So there's a lot of weight to being located in a space that's close to the work that you'll be doing in the future. So that's why I'm a big believer in making sure that students are downtown. The other thing is, with a lot of faculties that don't have to be tied to a suburban style campus, there's a lot of innovation that can take place if you're located in downtown spaces where a lot of our tech accelerators and innovation hubs are located. So I see tremendous potential and opportunity. I'm really excited that the School of Architecture is down here and contemplating further moves. As you said, in other cities, I see vibrant downtown cores that have post-secondary, and there's no reason we can't do the same.
Yeah, so what you're saying is you see the University of Calgary in some way continue to increase its presence downtown and contributing to the revitalization of the core.
Absolutely.
As hopefully students come to live and study, and keep the vibe going 24 hours a day, not just during the workday.
Yeah, absolutely. I see students and faculty and staff playing a big role in taking up some of the residential spaces that we'll be creating. But absolutely, from a learning perspective, I think it's really important to have that sort of a continued learning environment downtown as well as on the main campus.
Can you share with us, obviously we talk about downtown revitalization, we talk about the tax base and what that needs to, how we have to reinvent, we have to revitalize the downtown core to build back the tax base. What do you see as some of the measures you're looking at to rebalance the tax burden and give some relief to local businesses?
It has been a challenge to unpack how we get to a position where we've got a strong and attractive business environment that is prefaced in the type of property tax regime that is inviting to businesses and not unfair to them. I will tell you that when I was first elected in 2017, it took about a year to dig through how we were allocating responsibility for the operating budget. And when we uncovered that 55% of the operating budget was being carried by non-residential properties, that was quite revealing. And you can understand how 20,000 properties being responsible for 55% of a budget when 500,000 properties were only carrying 45% of the load really showed that we needed to make a different ratio exist. So as a council, we moved the needle to be 48-52 instead of 55-45. And I know I'm getting into a lot of technicalities. But when we compare ourselves to other jurisdictions in Canada, we are unfairly expecting non-residential properties to carry the operating budget burden. And that's something we need to continue shifting. I think it's going to be important to look for alternate revenue sources in some cases as well. We can't just expect property taxes to pay for everything. And I think we've got to start demanding a bit more from our provincial and federal partners in terms of the grants that are available and in terms of some certainty and predictability in sharing some of the costs and benefits of the projects that we have on the go.
Can you share some of the conversations you've had in that regard? Obviously, you have a limited number of levers that you can pull in order to raise revenue. So what kind of conversations have you had with the province and with the federal government to sort of take some pressure off and perhaps be able to change change the needle on the funding issues?
So the conversations that I've had with the provincial government really revolve around making changes to the Municipal Government Act, where we've got the opportunity to have some more certainty around how we would raise revenue and how we can share in some of the revenue that's raised at a provincial level. Right now, the city is not able to benefit at all from income tax, so maybe there should be a proportional share based on the amount of income tax that we're generating from our municipality. We also have a system whereby we collect what used to be known as an education tax on behalf of the provincial government. Now, that money that we collect for them goes into their general accounts. So I don't know that it's being allocated specifically for education, but I'd be very interested to see them take less than 38 or 40% of the total property taxes we're collecting, especially at a time like this where we are just beaten down and in a recession. I think it's time to adapt and change that formula. From a federal perspective, I've had conversations with many different ministries, and I have explained to them that an investment in Calgary is an investment in leadership in energy transformation, and it will put not only our city but our country on the map. So it's been well received, and they're wanting to know more about what's happening in our city, and that's a great outcome.
That's encouraging to know, but I think people still focus on that 48-52 split. And how do you see that changing, and will we see something in the upcoming fiscal year?
I think we're going to have some pretty serious conversations as a council about what it is that we wish to do to position ourselves competitively. Perhaps we want to look again at the fact that we are, we're strong in terms of having a low property tax for residential, but we're not competitive on the business side. And I know that people are often worried about changing that proportion because they're worried about getting reelected. This is not the time to be focused on re-election. This is the time to be focused on how we strengthen our business community so that people can stay gainfully employed in our city, and we can demonstrate that we are an attractive place to come and locate your business.
So that speaks to the next question about talent. How do you see what the initiatives that you have underway at the city being instrumental in attracting talent? Have you thought about a different strategy to attract talent to the city, to help diversify and continue the pace of economic growth that we've started along that path? What is your strategy for attracting talent to Calgary?
I think there's a couple of ways I would approach that question. First off, I've had the opportunity to talk to several student groups, including just a conversation a few days ago with the Graduate Students Association at the University of Calgary. And I think people are sometimes misguided when they think of students at a university and they consider them to be, first year, just entering a degree program. Sometimes we forget that we've got students who are graduating from programs and are looking for a place to work. And instead, we've been more focused on attracting talent here than focusing on the talent that already exists here. So I'm very interested in making sure that recruitment firms and human resource departments are well aware of the skill sets that our students possess. Just because somebody doesn't have a degree in technology or engineering doesn't mean they're not suitable for work in the energy sector. So we've got to look beyond the types of degrees we used to hire and start looking at the talent that students are graduating with. So from a local perspective, I think we've got to be smarter about who we've already got here. In terms of attracting talent from other places, it's incredibly important to demonstrate that this is a forward-thinking city. This is a city with great amenities. It's a place that's affordable, a place that looks after people in positions of vulnerability. So I think really demonstrating the fact that we are resilient from an economic, environmental, and social perspective is the brand that we need to be portraying to attract talent here. And really supporting those companies that are already here, especially in the tech and innovation sector. Our problem isn't startups. Our problem is scale-ups. So we've got to continue investing in the companies that are here and allowing that tech sector to really get to that critical mass so that we start seeing more talent flowing here.
Well, you mentioned something about being able to work in a number of different industries regardless of your education. I always say Don't be constrained by the letters of your degree. Think differently and let yourself look for other opportunities, not just within the parameters of what your degree says. So you talk about amenities and you talk about being forward looking. So how important is the events center as meeting that vision of Calgary as being forward looking, as having amenities that will attract people to come here?
It's incredibly important. And previous council that I served on made a commitment to creating an entertainment district that included an event center. And we have seen an affirmation of that vision by this council as well. So I think the benefit that we have before us right now is the ability to understand what an entertainment district contains. And it takes the pressure off of making the event center that initial catalyst. It may not have to be. If we're looking at things more holistically and we're reimagining the spaces that are within that entertainment district, let's think about how Stampede can bring about some change to that area as well. Let's think about our other partners that are there that are interested in doing residential or hotel. That's the vision that council needs to focus on, and that will ensure that the event center that we are putting there is one that's well equipped to take on all types of different functions. It's not just a sporting facility, it's one that can attract entertainers from a variety of fields. And let's not forget, gaming is a pretty big sector as well. So an event center that is accommodating of things that are different than what we're used to is going to be incredibly important.
So what you're saying is it's not dead. It's something that it's a project that's going to be revived, revitalized. Can you give us a sense of how confident you are that we'll go ahead?
Yeah, the event center is not dead. The initial deal that we had was one that was untenable for both parties. I believe that during the pandemic, a lot of organizations globally have seen that supply chain disruptions, issues with logistics, cost of materials has really compromised a lot of projects that were contemplated before the pandemic. I think we will find ourselves in a situation where a variety of different stakeholders and partners are interested in working together to bring something forward that is in keeping with the times and is also aware of the economic situation we're in. So we continue to move forward and we are very optimistic. Obviously, as a council, we voted 15-0 to ensure that we kept our eye on this.
So we've had a number of questions submitted from you Calgary alumni and the community. So we're going to just move into that portion of this event. And one of them, they fall into a number of different buckets. And the first one's education. How does having a Ph.D. in sociology impact how you approach your job as mayor? And how did your time at U Calgary as in the faculty and as a student shape your vision for the city?
Oh, great question. University of Calgary, everyone jokes around with me, is my happy place. I mean, whenever I have a chance to go to campus, there's generally a massive smile plastered on my face because I love that space. I love everything that the university represents. It was a pleasure to get 2 degrees from that institution. And I think the learnings that come with a degree in sociology allow you to be a good city builder. So I'm very interested in making spaces and places that allow for people to have great experiences. So city building is really that intersection of people and places. I can tell you that the political economy work that I learned, both the theory as well as the examples of cities that have done a good job of reinventing themselves, gives me a lot of opportunity to engage in debate and dialogue with my colleagues and show them what works in other places. It also gives me a huge opportunity to tap into the relationships I've built with the commercial real estate sector, not only in this city, but throughout North America. And it's rewarding to know that I'm actually doing work that is based on what I learned. I don't know that my undergrad degree did that for me, but this one certainly did.
What was your core question in your doctoral research?
It looked at the hybrid nature of urban rural counties like Rocky View. So I specifically studied Rocky View County and looked at the conflict that often comes with being a place that was formerly very clearly defined as rural and evolving into something that wasn't quite urban, but also wasn't rural, and the struggles that come for stakeholders as that place is changing and the impact that it has on the urban center that's immediately adjacent.
Sure. So this is that we have an infrastructure bucket that we're going to tackle. What's your vision for the public art program in Calgary moving forward?
The public art program?
Yeah. Yeah. What's your vision for it?
Yeah. I would say that one of the best moves that we made as a council is ensuring that the public art program is stewarded by people who have expertise in the field, not taking any kind of dig at administration, but I think it's really important to have people who are practicing in the arts play a role in what our public art program looks like. And I'm very happy to see that we've got folks who are successful from a commercial perspective, folks that come from a variety of different arts backgrounds that are helping guide us towards doing better. I think the thing that we were missing is the fact that the policy really constrained us from doing great public art. If you can only attach a piece of public art to the piece of infrastructure that's funding it, you're not going to get great engagement from the community. The example in Ward 3, which is where I served for 4 years, is Traveling Light or the Big Blue Ring. That is a very interesting piece of art. Some people love it, some people hate it. It was incredibly contentious when it was installed. But if it was somewhere that you could actually engage with it better rather than on that bridge, I think people would have greater appreciation. So I'm looking forward to more local talent. I'm looking forward to smaller projects that people can actually appreciate and understand.
Other question is, what's the plan to improve infrastructure for cycling and walking around the city?
I think the pandemic has revealed something to people who may not have considered it before, and that's that we have many communities where it's limited how far you can cycle or walk. We have so many communities where people were out in throngs on the walking pathways and struggling to understand why we didn't have more space for them. That's why we opened up some lanes of traffic to pedestrians and non-motorized vehicles as well. I believe that Calgary, to be a future-focused city, needs to invest more into connecting people with mobility options that are outside of just personal vehicles. It's going to be incredibly important to make sure that people can cycle to the places they want to go, that they can walk there safely. If we're really committed to building complete communities where you can go about your daily routine, we're going to have to make sure that the pathways exist to allow that to happen.
It's hard to actually, as a cyclist, it's hard to actually access the west side of the city because there isn't a safe way to get out. There's been so much construction, so I'll just leave that on your plate to think about. We can get people outside the city.
Thank you.
We can get to Hockeyview County and enjoy the scenery and have some great cycling because that's what we've got outside the city. One question about multiple rezoning applications that have been approved across the city. And because affordable housing is very important to the university and its students and to the city at large, what is your vision for affordable multifamily housing?
You know, one of the struggles that we had as a council for the early part of my last term was the idea of secondary suites having to go through such a cumbersome process at council. And I was very happy when we finally decided that secondary suites were something that was desirable and you shouldn't have to come with a land use change application. I was very proud of that decision of council. I think what we're seeing now is an incredibly intentional focus on making sure that all neighborhoods offer all different types of housing options for people, whether that means multi-generational housing or it means multi-unit housing. We've got to make sure that people have all of the options that are desirable instead of focusing on, one housing form alone. We can't have single detached neighborhoods that have no other options for people as they're downsizing. We need to make sure that people have availability of different types of housing solutions depending on the stage of life they're at or the economic situation they find themselves in. You have to do it across the entire city.
If you had to prioritize the major challenges that you face as mayor and the city itself faces, what would they be? Top three.
Oh, I would say that getting downtown back on track and ensuring that our economic resilience is strengthened by having a very diverse economy, That's absolutely a priority for everyone. People are looking for meaningful work, and the success of our business community is the success of our city. I would say that focusing on people who are in positions of vulnerability and making sure that we are looking past just housing and ensuring that we've got the wraparound supports that people need as they find a dignified place to live. Staying committed to that is going to be important. And then ensuring that we are looking for more sustainable ways to grow as a city. It really is that triple focus on environment, economy, and society that will allow us to be more resilient.
Calgary is the third most diverse city in the country. A lot of people don't know that. We don't tell that story very well. But I guess the other piece to that is, how do we engage the cross pollination, the connection between all the different segments of the city to connect people with the multicultural aspects that many people don't have an opportunity to interact with. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, cities are interesting places. When people come and settle in a city, they're sometimes looking for a familiar set of institutions, whether it's a place of worship or a shopping center or, anything that helps them feel a connection to home. That's what they're looking for. So in a lot of cities, you will see ethnic enclaves start to grow. So whether it's something like Chinatown or Little Italy or, Little India, those are the colloquial ways that we describe these places, because people feel a sense of closeness and togetherness with folks that speak a common language or have a common background. I think what comes with that, though, is the inability of people to connect with those enclaves because they don't feel that they're a part of them. So I think what's going to be really important for a young city like Calgary, that is a great immigrant receiving area, is making sure that all of the spaces and places in our city are as inclusive and welcoming as some of those enclaves that have been successful, and that we are ensuring that we've got the right amenities located in all kinds of neighborhoods so we can bring that diversity throughout the city. I think that's an interesting challenge for most cities that have done a good job of welcoming immigrants, is making sure that we are also at the same time ensuring that our neighborhoods are as diverse as the population.
And do those cities that have done a good job, are they less downtown centric than Calgary, would you say?
It depends. If you ask somebody if they've done a good job, a lot of people will say, well, if we've attracted a strong immigrant population and they've stayed here, then we've been successful. And that may be because, there's a certain part of the city where everyone goes. I would say the cities that are most successful are the ones where it really is a welcoming and inclusive environment, because people are willing to try different things and engage with new people and new cultures. The most successful cities are the ones where we take the time to understand what may be different about us, but why that makes us stronger, and to really understand how different cultures and languages and religions can better work together to make us stronger. So I think it's that sense of appreciation of each other and really understanding who the other is, so that they don't feel like other anymore, that we're all being as welcoming as we can. It's pretty, I don't know, it's kind of complicated, that messy business of making sure that we are not forcing people to integrate into something that they don't wish to, because that's our Western norm, but also making sure that people see a space and a place for themselves as they are newcomers.
So speaking of seeing a place for themselves, you are Calgary's first female mayor. And you are now, you are a role model. You have been a role model for women in this city. So how do you see yourself being able to empower women of various ages, economic and ethnic backgrounds, to be successful in Calgary, regardless of what they choose to pursue as careers?
Well, I think it's great that we have normalized the fact that a woman can hold the office of mayor. And it has been very interesting for me to talk about things that I don't think have been highlighted in the past. I always think it's a pleasure to talk about the 51, which is a financial feminist group. They have done an incredible amount of research and advocacy that demonstrates that women-led enterprises are doing very well in our city. they are outperforming their male counterparts often by 60%. And that's not a shot at male-led enterprises. It just means that we have now found a new way of doing business that is incredibly successful and appealing. However, those women-led enterprises are only able to attract about 3% of the capital that's available. So when I have the opportunity, I talk about that because I think we need to fix that disparity. So, as an example, when Plug and Play came to Calgary, I had a great chance to talk to them about this very thing. And it was incredibly encouraging to hear that the two companies that they talked to in the week preceding my meeting with them were both women led enterprises. So, I think as a woman, I'm able to talk about issues that I think are important that have perhaps been sidelined or not discussed enough. Things like childcare and the ability to have a strong workforce if you focus on things like childcare. Building out our transit network so that kids have independence and all kinds of people can get to where they need to go. Those aren't necessarily women's issues, but I think women just look at them with a different lens.
They're family issues, and
Exactly.
sometimes they're put in the gender bucket. But on that note, how important when you saw that the federal government had come with the province to announce the childcare program? How you must have been really pleased with that, given what you just said. And how do you see
I
the city
was
making for childcare downtown?
I was absolutely thrilled when that announcement was made. I was disappointed leading up to it that we couldn't find some sort of a deal. At previous council, I had brought a notice of motion saying, if the provincial government can't hammer out a deal, that we should go hard and hammer out our own deal as a city to make sure we've got strong access to funds for creating childcare spaces. I think it's going to be important for childcare providers to be able to access those funds, and it's also going to be important for parents to be able to access those funds. And it strengthens our workforce, it strengthens our economy, and it really, once again, normalizes this idea of women being a strong part of the workforce because now they can have childcare available to them.
Off the top, you talked about one of the things that surprised you was the opposition to vaccinations. Just a question about how we move agendas forward and how you accomplish what we want to accomplish on behalf of the city means building bridges and building consensus. How do you see yourself doing that when there are some that are close to dialogue but important to making those changes and advancing an agenda?
Well, I think from the perspective of building relationships with other orders of government to get things done, I've had great conversations with our premier. I've had great conversations with many of the ministers in our provincial government. And I think sometimes it's a matter of getting down to the basics. And that is, we all want to see our city succeed because it's important to the people that we serve. So once we can get away from political ideologies, I find it's easier to work together. Same thing with the federal government. When they are able to come here or I'm able to do this type of a call with them, I do stress to them that our energy sector is doing some really strong work and it's going to be important for them to build those relationships, to understand why energy transformation and transition is an important part of Calgary's economy and why it's going to take time to get through that transition. So, you just keep trying to build those bridges. You keep trying to find the common language that you need to move forward. And I'm incredibly committed to that. And, I know my council is as well. They're very interested in what we can do together so that each of us takes a leadership role to make sure we're advancing what Calgarians need.
So give us your Calgary sales pitch.
I can tell you when I was down in Houston and when I've been talking to people from other places in the country, the thing that I say the most often is Calgary is an incredibly welcoming place. It is not only beautiful, it is affordable. There are many different types of businesses that are successful here, and we are incredibly future focused. We are innovators. We are people that are passionate about making a difference in the world, and this is a place you should choose to live.
Well, Mayor Gondek, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to share some of your thoughts on your vision for Calgary and some of the challenges that we face as a city, but also how you plan on taking us through and giving us that forward-looking vision for the future so that we can succeed. So
Well, and
thank
thanks
you
very much for Thanks for inviting me back to the university, even though it's virtual.
Yeah, it's too bad that we couldn't do this. It's too bad we couldn't put you in your happy place and do it at McEwen Hall, but maybe we could do it again when everything opens up, maybe sometime during the semester. Just as a closing, here at UCalgary, we recognize and celebrate alumni such as Mayor Gondek, who are leaders and innovators in their industry and community. And the 2022 Arch Awards have begun collecting nominations. Please visit alumni.ucalgary.ca to nominate an inspiring UCalgary alum that you know for one of these prestigious awards. I hope you've enjoyed this program and that we'll see you again for our next webinar on Tuesday, February 15th. Please stay tuned to learn what we will be talking about then. And if you'd like to view any portion of this program again, watch for an email from us with a link to the full event recording. If you enjoyed our discussion, I encourage you to visit ucalgary.ca/community, where you'll find more webinars, podcasts, and stories on topics that matter to you. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.